Perfect. Lovely. So welcome all. If you could keep your microphones and cameras off for the duration of the talk, that would be great. So let me introduce Charlie Smith from Bath University, who's going to give us a very useful talk this evening and give you a chance to ask some questions. And I'll also quickly at the end run through the sort of Henley College procedure and deadlines and things in case you're not aware of those. But I will hand over to Charlie now and turn my mic off.
Lovely, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Charlie from the University of Bath, and I'm just going to share my screen, and then we will be able to get started. So hopefully you can all see the screen. This evening I'm going to be talking to you all about applying to university, things to consider when making your application, how to support effective research, and I'm going to be focusing on applying to kind of competitive universities. I'll talk a little bit about what competitive universities are, and then I'll go into a bit more sort of tips and advice on making a strong application. I've worked in higher education and admissions for the best part of 8 years. Before I worked at Bath, I actually worked for UCAS. So I've got lots of experience working with students, but also universities, admissions teams and recruitment teams. So please do feel free to use this as an opportunity to ask questions if there's anything you're not sure of. So in today's session, I wanted to focus first of all a little bit on choosing a university and then a university course. There's a huge amount of choice. I'm going to go into a little bit about that, what that looks like, how to kind of give some tips around narrowing down choices, making a short list, then also give you some tips around making an application, give you some advice and guidance on things to do to help your application stand out, to write an effective personal statement, and then also just finish by talking a little bit about Bath University, what we have to offer, but then crucially at the end you have your chance to ask us any questions that or ask me any questions you might have. So when thinking about applying to a competitive university, as far as lots of people will say, there's kind of 4 things that we in the sector would recognise as being important to make a competitive application. First and foremost is doing research. Now, doing research is a huge undertaking, and it can look like lots of different things. So when we say doing research, we're not just saying get a prospectus and get prospectuses and read about course information. There's lots of different things you can do. There's lots of different avenues you can find out about the options available to you, the courses available to you, but we know that proper effective research into university choices helps students not only find out where they want to apply, but crucially helps them secure places, helps them once they get to university make the most out of that university opportunity. And by doing the research, going through and looking at different course options, looking at different universities, it will help you kind of focus your mind as a student, maybe as a parent of a student as well, that the path, the choice to go to university is the right one. By doing proper research, not only will you understand the entry requirements that universities have. Entry requirements is just one thing that we at universities will look at when making decisions on applications. Yes, they do form an important part of it, and for certain courses, the importance of the grades students have before they apply will kind of differ. The more competitive courses, the more selective universities, entry requirements will obviously be higher, but also will play a bigger role in kind of admissions and selection of students. There's no getting away from it. If you're applying to a competitive university, we will look to
I've got an interview.
Sorry, I'm not sure. So when you're applying for a competitive university, we will look at your academic performance. Sorry, we will look at your sort of GCSE or level 2 attainment, and then we'll also look at your predicted attainment for level 3, and we will use that in lots of cases to decide where to make offers. The last thing, and this is one thing that I will cover in detail today, is kind of the personal statement. So lots of universities, the personal statement is a really important way of deciding who to make offers to. At the University of Bath, a lot of our courses, I'll go into this in a moment, a lot of our courses are oversubscribed. A lot of our courses, we have students who are predicted to get the grades that we need them to get. So the personal statement is a real tool of differentiation you as a student can use to, for want of a better phrase, sell yourself to us as a university and convince us to make you an offer. I thought it was worthwhile, just before I get into kind of the details of doing proper research and finding out, where to apply to, just touching briefly on what we mean by competitive university. So every year, through UCAS, over 500,000 students will apply, and there's always more applications than there are places. At Bath, we tend to see around between 7 and 12 applications per place, depending on the course. Some of our more competitive courses include things like architecture and psychology, things like criminology as well. And for these courses, sometimes it can be up to 12, 13, maybe even 14 applications per place. So making a strong application will really increase your chances of being selected. When we talk about competitive universities, you may have heard of things like the Russell Group or high tariff universities. Bath were not actually in the Russell Group, but we rank a lot higher than a lot of the universities in the Russell Group. One of the reasons that we rank so highly is that our graduates tend to do really well after leaving us. At Bath, we place a big focus on preparing graduates for life after university, and I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the session. At competitive universities and selective universities, there tends to be a higher completion rate. So this is the numbers of students who start their university course and then see it through to graduation at the end. We also will look at things like salary of our graduates, both sort of 6 months and 12 months after leaving us. And we're at Bath, we score about 4th in the league tables in terms of starting salaries. And then the last thing that kind of would help to define a competitive university is our student satisfaction. And we score very highly, the highest student satisfaction rates in England and Wales. And student satisfaction comes down to lots of things. So it's not just the enjoyment of the course, but it's things like where you're living, the support you have from both academics and non-academics that will make your time at university enjoyable and fruitful. So moving on then to thinking about choosing a course and choosing a university, there's huge amounts of choice. And part of what you can be doing now, as you approach your summer, you start thinking about the end of college and summer holidays, really would encourage you to start doing your research. So looking at the different universities and colleges that are available to you, look at the different courses, find out what you want to know, whether it be what courses are available, whether it be the entry requirements, whether it be the accommodation, whatever it might be. Over the next sort of few months before you start your final year, I'd really encourage you to be kind of proactive in your research and take the time to find out everything you want to know about your university courses to help you make a strong application. By doing research, you will not only, as I said, decide where you want to apply, and you'll recognise and find out what universities are looking for from their students. You'll also be able to be confident that the choices that you're making are the right ones and will be for you as an individual. And I think it's really important to stress that university, higher education isn't compulsory. It's a great route for lots of people, but it's not compulsory. There are lots of other things you can do after leaving school and college. So, the more research you do, the more confident you'll be making the right choice for you, and ultimately you're making an informed decision. Now, obviously, I know we're doing this virtually, so I'm not going to ask for audience participation. But just hypothetically, for a moment, imagine that I was able to offer a free holiday to one student or one parent from Henley College. If I took a straw poll before I gave away that free holiday and just got an idea of who wanted to go to either Bath or Barbados, it's a fair assumption to make that most people, with that limited bit of information, would say Barbados is the choice for them. Now, If I gave you a little bit more information and said that people who are going to Bath for their free holiday were going to be treated like rock stars, they're going to be able to take 5 friends, they're all going to be given £5,000 spending money, they're going to be treated to a day at the day and a night at the spa, they're going to be taken on a helicopter ride, you might think, well, actually, that's more enjoyable. Especially if I then went on to say, if you're going to Barbados, you're going to be doing labouring, you're going to be working on a building site doing 12-hour shifts, it's going to be hurricane season. You probably think, oh, actually, the trip to the bath and the spa is more kind of my thing. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, when you're looking at university choices, when you're considering your options, universities will use lots of different ways to try and sell themselves to you as a student. And you as a student, or as somebody supporting a student, needs to be kind of critical in the way that you make your decisions. Is the information that you're looking at, is it relevant to you as a student? For example, if a university is telling you about their sporting facilities, but you don't play sport, is that really relevant? If they're talking to you about the contact hours for one department, is that relevant to you? So I'd really encourage you to kind of think about that. Some universities will offer incentives for you to put them as your first choice on your application. Some things like offering a free iPad, free laptop, and you as a student, by all means, it's perfectly entitled to accept that. But I would just encourage you to be kind of critical when you're making your choices, to make sure the choices you make are right for you. And there is a huge amount of choice to consider when thinking about university. There are round about 370, 380 higher education providers you can apply to, all of those through UCAS. At these different providers, there are huge amounts of different course types. So you've got your kind of traditional bachelor's degree. These will usually be a 3-year course, a Bachelor of Science, BSc, or a Bachelor of Arts, a BA. Increasingly, though, universities are looking to change what they offer to their students. So at Bath, for example, we now offer students the opportunity to do what we call an integrated master's. So this will be for things like engineering. Instead of doing a 3-year course, you have the option of doing a 4-year course. But at the end of it, not only do you have a bachelor's in engineering, you also have a master's in engineering. We know that for courses such as engineering and other sort of science-based and more technical courses, that further year of kind of higher education study really helps our graduates when they come to enter the graduate market. They have that extra year of study, that extra year of theory and practice behind them to really help them. There are also increasingly numbers of foundation degrees, gap degrees, and other kind of programs you can offer or are being offered, which you may be looking at as well. Increasingly, universities are offering things like degree apprenticeships. These are a great opportunity for the right in the right situation. Degree apprenticeships tend to be very specific in terms of their outcome, but some of the benefits of a degree apprenticeship, as you may be aware, the employer will pay the kind of tuition fees for the student. The student may also get, and usually will get, a salary, but it's a very different experience doing a degree apprenticeship than it is doing a kind of classical 3-year bachelor's degree or an undergraduate master's. So again, with all of this, there's no right or wrong. It's just important to kind of think about the different options, the different routes. It's not just a kind of standard 3-year course to think about. In terms of the subjects you can study at university, again, there are thousands. I think last time I looked, it was about 38,000 different courses. Some of those are very traditional subjects and courses. Some of them you may be studying at the moment whilst whilst at college. Some of them you may not have studied before at all. With that, think traditional courses like chemistry or languages or maths, there are very specific entry requirements. So to study science at most universities, you will have to have had some level of science qualification before you progress to university. You may want to study a completely new discipline, something like architecture, engineering, pharmacology. And lots of these courses are kind of, again, quite competitive in terms of the application process, the entry requirements that they look at, but they offer a new discipline and a new skill. Increasingly, universities are offering what we call interdisciplinary skills and courses. So natural sciences, for example, at Bath gives you, the student, the opportunity to combine multiple sciences to one undergraduate degree. This allows you to focus on what you like, but also what you're interested in doing post graduation, and helps you to kind of focus on your career while studying at university. And then you've got the kind of vocational courses as well, things like medicine, pharmacy, social work, other courses like nursing at the universities, where the degree is a very specific route into a career that you might want to pursue. And usually, not always, after completing a degree like this, you will then go on to work in that very set or specific field. I think it's important when you're considering your choices to really be broad in what you're looking at. Don't rule out any options. Through UCAS, you are able to apply to a maximum of 5 choices, but it doesn't mean you can't look at 10, maybe 15 courses. A good way to do it as you're going through and you're looking at courses, maybe create like a long list of courses that you're interested in, and then you can narrow that down to a kind of short list of 5 once you're happy to do so. I'm not going to go through all of the courses on screen at the moment, but hopefully that gives you just a flavour of the different routes available to you when you're leaving college and considering university. And increasingly each year, universities are offering new courses to reflect demand, trends, advances in technology, and kind of, I would really encourage you to look at new courses. Often these new courses are taught by academics who are leading in kind of research and in their field. So a great way to really enhance your kind of career prospects and really study something which is up to date and modern and kind of relevant. As I mentioned at the start, entry requirements play a big part of applying to university. Understanding the entry requirements for the courses you're applying to will really help you recognise what you need to do, whether you're able to, whether you would qualify for the courses that you're applying for. At Bath, we have a number of courses where there are essential subjects. So, for example, if you're doing any of our engineering courses, usually you will need physics and or maths to be considered. If you're doing a science course, so like chemistry, then you will have to have that science at level 3, usually at an A level, but not exclusively, to be able to kind of progress onto it. For other courses, things like our architecture course, there are preferred subjects. So we would like to see in our applications students who are doing kind of numerical based courses as well as kind of creative courses. When you're doing your research, it's really important to understand the difference between the essential and preferred, and make sure you know what you're applying for, whether the courses and the subjects you're doing at the moment will kind of enable you to progress onto the courses that you're applying for. It's worth thinking about, as well as the kind of headline entry requirements, whether universities will consider things like an EPQ or other academic qualifications alongside the main ones that you're doing. And if they do accept them, most universities will. What does that mean? How will that affect or change your offer? So at Bath, for example, if you're doing an EPQ and you're doing A levels alongside them, we will say if you score a grade A in your EPQ, we will lower your offer for your course by 1 grade. So, for example, you apply for a course with entry requirements of A star AA. If you get an A in your EPQ, we'll lower the entry requirements for that course for you to AAA. It's not a compulsory thing for you to do. Basically, we recognise the kind of value in the EPQ and the kind of the skills it teaches you as a student when applying to kind of university. For most of our courses, we don't offer students the opportunity to attend an interview, but however, there are lots of university courses where this is an option. The only times we'll interview at Bath is if you're applying for either pharmacy or our social work course, or if you may be a mature learner or you've been out of education, you're coming back, then potentially we might interview you if appropriate. With interviews, I think it's important to understand that they can vary hugely in the kind of style and the scope of an interview. And it's important, if you are invited for an interview, you understand what they are, what the requirements are and how that interview is going to be conducted. Work experiences, I think, is an interesting one. Often students will, particularly over the last few years, worry that they don't have the right or relevant work experience. In very, very few cases is work experience an essential entry requirement. It's something that universities will look at as part of the application process. If you've got it, great. If you haven't got it, don't worry. There are lots of other ways to kind of strengthen your application And you can talk about lots of other ways to provide evidence of interest in the subject that you're looking at. When considering the which universities to look at, you will undoubtedly be drawn to different rankings, different league tables, and there are lots of different league tables. I would encourage you to really again be kind of critical in the way that you evaluate the rankings that you see. Different universities will place different emphasis on different rankings. So where there are rankings by people like the Times University, Complete University Guide, they're quite universal guides that lots of students will look at. But then you also have more kind of bespoke and niche entry league tables and entry requirements. Look at lots of different places. Look at the UCAS website. Look at university websites. Speak to your teachers and advisors at the college. Speak to parents. Speak to people who you may know at a university. Lots of different ways to find information. I said I would always recommend find the courses you're interested in. Have a look at the rankings. But don't kind of base your decisions off rankings. Go and visit a university, attend an open day, go and have a look round, and from that you'll get a real kind of clearer picture of whether that is the right course and the right university for you. There are lots of other rankings, things like student satisfaction, how students enjoy their experience at university, and also lots of universities will highlight their kind of graduate prospects and earnings and potential. Again, if that's something that's important to you, then great, but it's just another metric that you might want to consider when thinking about where to apply to. Okay, so moving on then to thinking about standing out. So Bath is a selective university, as I kind of highlighted at the beginning. So we're well placed to kind of discuss how you as a student can make your application stand out. So it's important to think about when you're making your application to university, what is being looked at by university admissions team. So it will vary depending on the university you're applying to, the course you're applying to, and your own individual circumstances. But in the main, at Bath especially, we will look at the top 4 boxes for all students. We will then potentially look at the bottom row, but only in certain situations. So for the most part, we only look at the 4 boxes across the top. The only kind of exception to that with our admissions tests, you can, if you are taking things like the maths qualifications tests, if you put that on the application, we will look at that, but it's not something that's you need to do for all of our courses, and it will be very clear in our prospectus if you are applying for a course that is relevant. So thinking about prior academic performance, this is usually your kind of GCSEs or any kind of other level 2 qualifications that you've taken. We will look at that, particularly in our more competitive courses where students are often predicted the grades that we need. GCSE attainment is a great way for us to differentiate between students. We will also look at the predicted grades for your A-levels or other vocational BTEC qualifications you might be taking, and we will use that as a kind of basis for our decision making. But we also place a big emphasis on the personal statement. So the personal statement is your chance to tell us at the university why we should make you an offer. And I'm going to go through over the next kind of five or so minutes how to write an effective statement, things to include, things to avoid, and a few kind of tips and tricks to write an effective statement. It's worth also bearing in mind that the college will also write a reference for you, which will support your application. Often the reference is there just to kind of complement the rest of your application, but it is something that universities will look at when making decisions to students. But I wanted to focus now for the next few minutes, as I said, on the personal statement. And effectively, the personal statement is your opportunity to answer 2 questions really clearly, really distinctly. So the 2 questions are, why do you want to study the subject or the course that you're applying for? And crucially, what makes you the right person for the course that you're applying for? And there's lots of different ways to answer those 2 questions, but as you go through and you plan your statement, as you do your research into your courses, hopefully those 2 answers you'll be able to kind of gather evidence and supply that as part of your statement. So the personal statement then is, I know it causes a lot of stress and anxiety, and it is one thing that there are lots of different ways to approach. The advice I'm going to give you over the next sort of a few minutes is based on my experience. There are lots of different ways to approach it, but my experience of working with different admissions teams, working with students, is this is kind of a good way to approach it. First of all, it's important to remember that it is only 4,000 characters in length, which might sound like a lot, but it really isn't. It's only about really 800-ish words. So you need to be precise, you need to be concise, and you need to make sure anything that you're including within your statement is relevant. And looking back to those two questions, anything in your statement should be able to answer one of those two questions. It's important to understand that your one personal statement will be shared across all the university choices that you make. So your statement has to work for your most demanding and your least demanding subject. If you are thinking of applying for different subjects, different disciplines, you need to consider that as well. It's important to remember that your application you're making is an academic one. So the statement therefore should have an academic focus to kind of sell yourself in the best way. In terms of doing that, there's lots of different approaches. I recommend, particularly for more competitive and selective university courses, the focus should be about 80% academic and then 20% kind of extracurricular. It's important though to remember that extracurricular bit shouldn't just be a random sort of tag on at the end of your statement. It should be relevant and kind of tied in to what you're doing, you're applying for at university. So what have you learned? What skills, what characteristics have you developed from doing your extracurricular activities that will complement your kind of academic course that you're applying for? And then I'll talk through a little bit how to do that in a moment. As I've mentioned already, research into your courses is really going to shine through in strong personal statements. So by doing effective research, you can appreciate not only what courses to apply to, but also what universities are looking for. So, on Bath's website, for example, we will very clearly say the types of student we're looking for in terms of skills, knowledge, experience. So when you're doing your research, I would recommend go through, make a list of the courses you're applying for, make a note of the different skills, the different knowledge that we're looking for. And then when you come to write your statement, if you've got a list of 5 courses, and for each 5 courses, for example, we're looking for something like critical thinking or problem solving, if you know what skills we want to demonstrate, it's much easier to evidence that as part of a statement. And evidence is really, really important. And what we mean by evidence is what can you show us that is, backs up that what you're saying. So anyone can say that they are a strong team player or they're good at problem solving. But without evidence, that is not believable. The more evidence you provide, the more persuasive you'll be able to be. And ultimately, it is a persuasive document you're trying to write. You're trying to persuade somebody at university to give you an offer based on your statement. Really, really important to focus on kind of spelling and grammar accuracy when writing a statement. So within the UCAS application form, there is no built-in spelling or grammar check. Please, I would recommend you write it in Word, copy it across. Make sure if you're doing that, that Word is set to English spelling, not American spelling. Also make sure that you're not just relying on spell check, get a second pair of eyes, somebody else to look through it to make sure you're saying in your statement what you want to be saying. It's really important that you're clear with language. You're not leaving anything to interpretation or be ambiguous. Be positive, be clear. Don't leave anything up to its interpretation. I'd also say here, try not to use like humor or jokes. Often that'll get lost in translation, particularly in the written word. You won't be able to kind of back it up. So just think about the language that you use when writing your statement. Use the language that you're comfortable with. Don't kind of put language or use language that you think we want to see, and then we want to kind of your individuality and your authenticity kind of shine through in the statement that you write. It's important to appreciate that writing your statement will be a process that you go through. It's not something that you'll sit down one evening, you start and finish. It will take you at least 4 or 5 drafts, if not more, to be happy with it. At some point though, you will have to go, right, I've done enough. I've done my statement, I need to submit it. But understand it's a process. You want to get feedback from people. You want to let your research kind of flow into it, and then you'll be kind of happy with what you have. The last point about overusing quotes is an important one. I think sometimes students feel the need to quote either kind of famous research or famous academics in the discipline they're applying for. Now, I'm not saying you don't do this, but just people reading your statements will be academics. There'll be people who've devoted their professional life to the discipline. We want to see your take on things, your opinion, and don't have to, don't use quotes. And I would say especially don't use quotes to start your personal statement. Talked about focusing your statement with an academic interest. Have an academic focus, sorry, within your statement. There's lots of ways to do that, and we're not just talking about describing to us what you've done in your lessons. It might be that you've done an EPQ. It might be you've taken part in some academic projects or competitions. It might be that you've attended a university summer school, and these are just examples. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. It might be that you want to tell us about further or wider reading that you've done around your chosen subject. It may be that you've decided to, or you've taken part in some online learning. All of these are great ways to demonstrate your interest and your interest in the subject that you're applying for. It might be that you've listened to a TED talk, watched a TED talk or listened to a podcast. It might be that you found an article in a journal which has led you to do a TED talk, and talk us through that thought process. Show us that you've taken some initiative to do some reading, to do some research, and that will show us that you are interested in the subject, you understand what you're applying for, you've done your research, and you're a strong candidate. We talk a lot about kind of wider reading, and there's lots of different things that you might want to include. It might be that you look at the university reading list that we have online. It might be that you want to quote specific articles or features that you've read. Don't just tell us though that you've read, you read the Financial Times or you read the Economist. Tell us about a specific article or a specific story that you followed. Give us your opinion. Give us a critical view of what you think is good about the article, what you agree with, what you disagree with. That really shows us that you're interested in the subject, you understand it, and you are genuinely interested in setting it to a higher level. I'm not going to go through all of these. Hopefully you're familiar with most of the kind of the logos on screen now, but these are just some ideas for sources to talk to us about the wider reading and the reading you've done, the research you've done around the subject you're applying for. Thinking about how you structure your statement, I think, is an important place to finish. When you're writing your statement, remember you want to be persuasive. You want to convince us to make you an offer. If you structure your statement well, then you will be more effective at convincing us to make you an offer. You'll be more persuasive, but also you'll be confident that you're including all the information that you need to. This is just one structure that I'm going to recommend. There are different ways of doing it. With the structure, it's quite a kind of loose way of doing it. So the opening bit is about a paragraph in length. So usually about 20 to 30% of your statement, where you are outlining your reasons to want to do the course that you're applying for. You might want to tie this to future academic interests you might want to pursue, maybe future career aspirations that you've got, anything like that. The main bulk of your statement, that second part, the evidence section, is where you're demonstrating to us that you've done your research and that you have the skills, the knowledge, and the qualities we're looking for our students. And then crucially, the last bit of your statement, the conclusion, is really important, that you tie everything up really neatly, really nicely, and you kind of reaffirm everything that you've talked about elsewhere. Because that conclusion will kind of stay with the admission selectors, and by finishing your statement strongly, you are leaving us with a positive impression of your application. Often we see with statements that it's just like a final paragraph about extracurricular activities or things like that, and it isn't obvious that is the end of the statement. One way that you might want to kind of help yourself stay on track with your personal statement is remember something called the ABC rule. So the ABC rule is basically saying that if you talk about an activity, an achievement, an assessment, attainment that you've done, it has to have a B and a C link to it. So what B benefit has that activity brought you, and crucially, C, how does it link to the course that you're applying to? If you can't apply the ABC rule to something you're including in your statement, then you need to kind of revise whether it's worth including or not. But the ABC rule is a great way of making sure you don't waste characters within your statement. You don't say you don't kind of put things in which aren't relevant. It might be the case there are lots of things that you've done in your whilst at college and in the last few years that you want to tell us about, but you're not going to necessarily be able to tell us about everything. What you want to do is focus on the things you are telling us, really making it clear why it's relevant to your application and why you're telling us. So the ABC rule, a great way to do that, and I'm very happy to kind of take questions on that at the end. I can't see questions the kind of chat section at the moment, but when I finish, I'll kind of look at that and go through that. So that finishes my section on kind of personal statements and making a competitive application. Just wanted to spend a couple of minutes now just talking briefly about the University of Bath, what we have to offer, and so then I'm very happy to take questions from people either over the chat or come off mute and have a proper conversation that way. So Bath University, we are do very well in lots of different university rankings, both we are in the top 10 for the 3 main university rankings, so the Guardian University Guide, the Complete University Guide, and the Sunday Times University Guide. We score really, really highly in student satisfaction. Last year, during the pandemic, 6 of our undergraduate courses scored 100% satisfaction, which is amazing and really shows the kind of value that students place not only on us as a university, but their experience of the course and everything else that goes alongside that as well. And we focus hugely on, as I said, preparing students for life after university, and our graduates do really, really well, in a whole range of different disciplines after they leave us. At the University of Bath, we don't offer every course that you might be considering. We are kind of medium sized in terms of a university. For example, we don't offer medicine courses or most healthcare related courses, but the courses we do offer tend to specialize in things like architecture, psychology, criminology are ranked as the best number 1, for their discipline in the country. In terms of other courses we don't offer, just to briefly mention, we don't offer things like English or history, but we do have a real focus on kind of STEM subjects, so science, tech, engineering, and maths. And we also do have a very strong School of Management, where you can do a range of kind of business courses and kind of related courses as well. One of the kind of unique things that we offer at Bath is the opportunity for all of our students on all of our courses, the opportunity to do either a study year abroad or a placement year. Now, this usually happens for students in their 3rd year, the exception to that being business and architecture, where it's broken down into 2 6-month placements. But these opportunities basically allow our students to prepare themselves for life after university. We have working relationships with over 3,000 employers nationally and more overseas as well. And we know that these opportunities really kind of help our students develop not only kind of academically, but also kind of professionally, personally, and really help them prepare for life after university. The University of Bath was kind of formed and to kind of focus on the kind of practical approach to learning and development. This is, as I said, hugely complemented by these opportunities. It's not compulsory for most of our courses, but it is compulsory for a few courses. And it is important to understand the kind of differences between that. When you're looking at the course information, make sure you understand. If you're not, please do get in touch and be happy to kind of talk you through. One of the unique things to say about the opportunities at Bath is, lots of universities give you the opportunity to do a placement, but at Bath it's done by, the opportunity is taken by nearly 70% of our students. So that means not only that you're all going away, or a lot of you going away and doing it, it also means when you come back for your final year of study, you'll be doing that alongside friends and peers you've made from your course, and it will just help your social life and your practical arrangements and living arrangements, that type of thing. Really good for things like housing. It's important to kind of think about when considering your choices. So it's not for everybody, it's not compulsory. My only word of advice around this would be, if you think you may want to do either a study year abroad or a placement year, when you make your application, then do choose the route that offers you that opportunity. If you don't do that, then it's not always possible to switch between a kind of non-opportunity route and an opportunity route, but something to be aware of. I'm more than happy to kind of take questions on that when we finish. I just wanted to finish on 3 kind of final tips, as I said, before I open up the floor to kind of questions that you guys might have. So first and foremost, and sorry to sound like a broken record, but I think it's really important, and I'm sure your kind of teachers and advisors will work on this. The more research that you do, the more confident you will be you are making the right application for yourself. You'll be making an informed decision. You'll be able to understand what you need to do to showcase your strength and your skills, the knowledge that you have to make a strong application, and ultimately, increase your opportunities and your chances of being made offers. Really crucially, please don't be afraid to ask us questions, either in things like this or via university website, via social media. The more questions that you ask, the more confident and comfortable you'll be with the decisions that you're making, and ultimately, hopefully, that will lead to the right decisions for you as an individual. I really stress that right for you as an individual, it is very much a personal choice. There is no right or wrong way to approach any of this. But the more information you have, the more kind of knowledge is power. The more confident you'll be able to be that you're making a decision which is going to suit you, and ultimately you get a good outcome at the end of it. And then lastly, when you're thinking about your personal statement, when you're thinking about your application, the more evidence you can supply, the more persuasive you're going to be. So ultimately that will lead to hopefully you securing the offers from the choices and the courses that you want to receive offers from. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate that's just been me talking for the last sort of half hour, 40 minutes. So very, very happy to take questions. If you have them, I will kind of look in the chat in a moment. Do follow us and other universities might be interested on socials. It will help you understand what we're looking for. And also we give out lots of practical advice, guidance and tips throughout the year, which will help you. I would also recommend you follow UCAS on socials if you're not doing that already. Really give lots of advice and support to you in your application process. But thank you,
Charlie. Charlie, would it be right before we take questions if I just whiz through my couple of slides, because I think thankfully it backs up everything you said. So not knowing exactly what you say, that's fine. So if everyone listening could just bear with me, I'll just share my screen and pop through the sort of procedure at Henley College for you. It won't take me a minute, and then we can take questions. Oh, is there feedback? Oh, that's right. So it's coming up, I hope. Perfect. Wait a minute longer. So I'm just going to take you straight to my first slide. Is that all right, Charlie? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Perfect. So what I've tried to do in the next few slides is just cut it up term by term for what students can be doing. So we're obviously in the summer term now for year 12 students. So where Charlie's saying research, 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 lo and behold, my first line is start your research. So we can't stress how important this is. It's really sad when students come to me the day before the deadline and they've not done any research, but they want to do their application, and it doesn't bode well, unfortunately. So Charlie's talked about that. Predicted grades are very important, and hopefully most of you will have some feel for that now from exams and coursework and things you've completed. But if your teachers will talk to you about your predicted grades, so do clarify that so you know, because the universities will definitely look at predicted grades. The UCAS hub is the UCAS website where you do your application, and you can register on that now. So just go to ucas.com, register as an applicant for 2023 as an undergraduate. And the buzzword is really important. So this links your application to the Henley College, and this is how we can add a reference. So you must do this. And the buzzword is easy to remember, Henley 2023. And some courses, as Charlie mentioned, do need extra exams and assessments, so now might be the time that you need to register to do those. Come the summer holiday, oh look, continue your research and draft and redraft your personal statement. So we've suggested you use Unifrog for this, because your tutors can then interact with you over Unifrog and suggest amendments and so on. You don't absolutely have to, but it's useful. It gives you ideas and suggestions, so why not use it? Charlie was talking about extra work experience, super curricular learning, so all that online stuff, extra reading, podcasts and all of that. And when you're using Unifrog, there's an activities button on Unifrog, and you can record all of these extra things you're doing on Unifrog with a little a few words to say what you got out of that experience and why it was relevant. And then when you come to writing your personal statement, you can pick up the 2 or 3 really good examples, this evidence, and use those in your personal statement, and you won't have forgotten them. So use the activities bit on Unifrog. Okay, next slide. So then we come back in the autumn. So you'll be year 13, and this is when you'll have lots of discussions with your personal tutor. And Charlie also mentioned the reference, which is very, very important as well. And we always say to students, the personal statement should be purely focused on your subject and your love of it and why you'll be good at it. If there's anything else that's happened that has impacted on your education, then that needs to go in your reference. So you need to share that with your tutor and explain why it's made a difference, and you can talk about how that can be put into your reference. Finalise your course choices, finalise your personal statement, finalise your application form, and then in red here we've got an internal deadline for your UCAS application form to be all completed and submitted to Henley College by the 8th of November. I'm sure, and I hope those of you applying for Oxford, Cambridge, Medicine, Veterinary or Dentistry know that you've got a much earlier deadline date. So UCAS is the 15th of the 10th, but we need that submitted by the 5th of the 10th, 2022. And then after that, you need to really, really, really keep an eye on your emails, because if there's anything wrong with your form, it will get sent back to you and you'll be emailed and told what to do. And you can use UCAS to then track your application. So that's the autumn term. Quickly going on. So then we get to the spring term 2023, and you might be asked to go to an interview or get a portfolio together. If you're made an offer, a lot of universities, I don't know if Bath do this, have an offer holder day. Nodding, so that's good. So this is so you've been made an offer and the university is trying to help you decide whether you should accept that offer or a different offer. So it's a sort of selling exercise, but it gives you a lovely day at the university on top of hopefully an open day where you can talk to students and staff and really find out what the course is all about. So if you do get offered an offer holder day or an applicant's day, then please do try and go. I know it's difficult to miss college. Student finance comes about, it's a different application form, February time 2023. Come the summer term, you'll then have hopefully 5 choices offered to you, and you decide your first and second choice. So that's your firm choice is your first choice and your insurance choice is your second choice, and you decline the others. Please make sure your firm choice has got higher entry requirements than your insurance choice if you possibly can, because otherwise it's no point having that as an insurance choice if it's got higher entry requirements. You also apply for accommodation at that point, and then you do all your exams and all of that loveliness. And then summer holiday 2023, end of August, you'll get your results and everything will be confirmed. And if the worst comes to the worst, UCAS clearing is an amazing thing that lots of people have great success through. Probably not with Bath, unfortunately. So this is just a timeline. So the 2 dates to remember are for the Medicine, Veterinary, Oxford and Cambridge, you've got that earlier deadline. For everybody else, you've got the 8th of November, where we would like you to have completed your form and submitted it to college. The 25th of January is the UCAS deadline for on-time applications. So we have 500 plus applications a year to sort out and give references to and everything. So we cannot have 500 people applying on the 25th of January because your application will go in late, which is why we suggest the 8th of November. So yes, I think that is it, isn't it, for me? Sources of help. So the personal tutor is really helpful. I will talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. The Unifrog website is really helpful. UCAS website is really helpful. I've got my own guide that I've written that I've emailed to parents and is on the website. There's the Careers Hub team full of stuff. And as Charlie said, please don't be shy about phoning universities because they've got teams of people waiting to speak to you to help you. So please make use of them. They love a call. So that's all I need to say. So I'll stop there and we can open it up for questions, please, from anybody. So unmute yourself if you would like to, or we'll also keep an eye on the chat.
Cool. So I think there are 2 questions already in there. The first one, I think it says, what is the emphasis does sport have on the university? So I'm not 100% sure kind of what you mean. At Bath there is huge. We have huge kind of provision for lots of different sport. We have some of the best sporting facilities in the country available on our campus. We have a number of professional and elite athletes who are current students, and you have the opportunity as a student to be involved in, I think it's about 250 odd different sports and activities if you want to, but it's not, you know, compulsory at all. There are lots of there's gyms and everything you can all kind of use, some of which is free to access, some of which you pay a little bit, but usually kind of subsidized rates. And some of the, we have, for example, Olympic sized swimming pool and other kind of state of the art kind of facilities for you to use and enjoy. Hopefully that answers your question, but please shout if you need any more info on kind of sport. We do have provision for any budding kind of professional or elite athletes to apply for something called I think it's a Sport Scholar program, where we will fit your studies around your professional sport, and I'm happy to send info to that if people are interested. The next question, it says, where would you advise is a good place to start for a student who does not know where they want to go to university, and if they do, what course to do? So real good tool I would recommend is on the UCAS hub. I think you might have to sign in to use it. They have basically a careers quiz, and they ask you a series of questions, and it gives you quite a good sort of steer on things you might want to consider. So that's a useful thing to do. Another kind of tip that I would say to people is if you have a specific career or employer in mind, look on their website and have a look at what they're looking for from their employees. So it might be they're looking for specific skills, specific degrees, and that might help and kind of work backwards from, you know, what from that. And the other thing to do is speak to people. You know, Julie, I'm sure more than happy to speak, but universities are happy to have conversations with you around, you know, what you want to do next, and kind of your options.
One quite useful thing, which not many students do, is to look at paper prospectuses. So if you don't have a clue, you can come to the lovely Deanfield Library and you can go to the careers bit and you can just pick up 2 or 3 prospectuses. Don't take them away, please, put them back. But just scan through and you'll be amazed at the range of courses, and it might just spark an interest. And then you can go on to, there's always lots more on the university website itself. So the prospectus isn't enough by itself, but it's just quite a good, because if you're searching online, you've got to have a keyword to search for, haven't you? And if you haven't got a clue, it's very hard to think of a keyword. So just flicking through a prospectus just throws things at you. So that's always quite a good idea. But I'm happy to talk to people, as Charlie said. Yep.
Brilliant. The next question is, if you start a course but change your mind, want to move to different courses, is that possible? It will very much depend on the individual circumstances. We will accommodate that where possible at Bath. There's not, some of our courses, it's less likely that you'll be able to do that just because of the nature of the way it's set out, and we're being a campus university, kind of limited in terms of teaching space and that sort of practical things like that. But we will facilitate that where we can, and offer alternatives where appropriate. Some of our courses, sort of science-based courses and things, there are some very kind of well-trodden, like swaps and stuff. You might change from doing a master's to a BSc, or you might do something like that, or it might be that you switch from one engineering route to another engineering route, which again is possible. It's quite a vague answer. I'm sorry, it's not a specific sort of step.
Shall I take the next one? So when choosing a gap year, should you complete your application form the prior year? So this is there's not a correct answer to this one either. If a student knows that they want to go to university and they've done all the research and they've chosen their courses, but they want a gap year, then why not do it whilst you're still at college and you've got all the support here? And then you can get your results in the summer and you know exactly where you're going, and then you can have your year of doing whatever you want to do. If a student isn't very sure, I tend to advise that to spend more time researching it and doing the application in a much better way, where you're really sure, you know, you've had the time to consider it carefully and go on open days and things, and to do it the autumn after you leave college, because you still would apply through Henley College, and we would still write you a reference. So in that way, you'll get the same same support. The only other thing about applying whilst you're still at college this coming autumn is that it's sort of a run through. You know, it's like you could do it as a practice application and then you can withdraw it. You know, you're not on a band to continue with it. So if you want to just go through it as a practice and see what happens, then you can say, actually, now I've changed my mind, I'm going to do a new application next year. And that's fine as well. So I think it depends how sure you are of what course and universities you want to go to, really. Would you add anything, Charlie? Is that?
Yeah, that's fair. I think
right?
yeah, you get the support from college is invaluable. So make most of it, I would recommend.
What else have we got here?
Um,
So the next question is similar, actually. So yes, from Evie, yes, we will help you apply after you've left, in that we will provide a reference and you can come and talk to me if you like.
There was a question about the student satisfaction scores. So the satisfaction scores that I was talking about come from the NSS, which I think is National Student Survey, and that is taken usually, I think it's between sort of January and April-ish. So for the scores I was mentioning, the survey would have been done between January 21 and May-ish, June-ish 2021. And it's sent out to all students who are currently studying with us or every university. And they get quite good completion rates. I don't think it's not every student completes them. And they ask a whole series of questions around if you're happy with the level of support that you got, contact time, access to facilities, access to things like libraries, that type of thing. If you Google NSS or National Student Survey, they've got a really good website which has lots of information, and it kind of talks you through, and there's a couple of like handy little videos which explain how they do it. So yeah, NSS, National Student Survey.
Can I just mention another website as well, which is really good for student satisfaction and sort of graduate salaries and things? And that's discoveruni.gov.uk. And if you go in there, you can pick up several different courses at different universities and compare them across the screen. And it's got all the student satisfaction data. So, you know, was it well taught? Did they mark my work on time? Did I feel supported? All of those nice questions. And then further down the screen, it gives average salary information. I think it's 18 months after they've left university, but then also 3 years or 5 years. Apologies, I can't quite remember. But it's really interesting. So if you put University of Bath something down there, and then you put some other university, not to say a name, you can see that going to somewhere like Bath actually, on average, gives a much better long-term salary prospect than potentially another university, or not. So discoveruni.gov.uk is really excellent. Good. Anybody else?
There's a question there about placement year. Yeah, so if you apply for a placement year at Bath and then change your mind, it is relatively straightforward to switch down to doing a course without the placement year. It's much harder to do it the other way. So to switch from a non-placement to a placement, just because the placement places are a bit more tightly capped in terms of the support that we can offer. So best advice is apply for one of the placement, and then if you change your mind, not a problem if you get in. I think that comes to the end of the questions.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody, and thank you, Charlie. So this is being recorded, so I will probably try and get it on the website if you want to look back at it in the next few days. So somewhere in the careers section of the Henley College website, I'll load it up there for people to look back on if you like. But I will stop recording now. Perfect. Stop recording.